Assaulting a shop worker will be made a separate criminal offence in England and Wales following pressure from campaigners. In the past year, shoplifting has reached record levels, with violent and abusive incidents against shop workers rising by 50%. The government previously responded to a petition for a law change by saying it would not be the most effective solution. But Rishi Sunak is now set to U-turn with an amendment to the Criminal Justice Bill. And police will also get £50 million to increase the use of facial recognition systems. Joining me to discuss all this is CEO of the Retail Trust, Chris Brook-Carter. Hello, Chris. And someone who has first-hand experience, Croydon shop owner Ben Selvaratnam. Good to have you both on board. Let's talk to Chris about this first. I mean, something had to happen, didn't it, Chris? We seem to cover this story almost daily on the programme. Most memorably talking to the chairman of the co-op, talking about the enormous numbers of break-ins and gang-related shoplifting incidents and the terror of his staff members, and even more notably, the fact that often they don't even bother ringing the police because the police just don't show up at all. I mean, it's an appalling, invidious state of affairs, isn't it? So could this help?
Thanks, Vanessa. Absolutely. You're quite right. Something did need to happen here. This has been a rising problem for a few years now. According to our data, around 40% of all shop workers are abused on a weekly level, and over half of them are now afraid to go into work every single day. So the impact of this and the impact of the violence towards store workers is quite profound on individuals and on their lives, and for us generally as a society as well. So yes, was a needed step. I think it sends a very clear signal that this needs to be taken seriously. It gives the police greater powers to do something about this. And of course, the money is quite welcome on that front as well, because resourcing, again, to deal with these incidents, rising numbers and rising levels of this is going to be really important. But it is just actually going to be a part of the solution. You know, this is a complex problem, and it's going to need a sort of pan-societal approach to actually dealing with this, that we need to see retailers making sure that their staff are well equipped to deal with this, well trained, and they know what to do. Around a third of retail staff still don't know how to report these incidents properly. And then actually we need to close the loop and make sure that those who are working in stores are actually reporting every single incident here, so that we have a very clear picture that the police are getting the right data, that they are resourced properly, and then they can take the right action to start clamping down on this.
And one of the issues, I suppose, Chris, that people are concerned about straight away is enforcement. You know, yes, you can change the law. Yes, you can give the police some money and hope that facial recognition is better and kind of souped up a bit. But is there really anybody around to reinforce any of this, or indeed enforce it in the first place, when so many of these incidents, day in, day out, go unattended and certainly unsolved?
Well, you're quite right. And one of the big problems here is that retail staff have almost lost faith in the system. So a third of those that we surveyed about rising levels of crime and abuse that they were facing day in, day out was saying that they don't bother recording it. They don't bother reporting it because when they have done in the past, there hasn't been any action. So as well as a change in the law, a really important part of this is that we really want to see the police take this very seriously, but we also want to see the retailers themselves provide the right support for their staff as well, so that there is a clear link between the actual number of crimes and abuse that's going on in the first place, the way that it's reported and collected and the data is collected, the technology that can be used, facial recognition technology, to make sure that the right evidence is there, and then the follow through for the police as well, because we really need to break the loop that we seem to be in around this issue at the moment.
Let me bring Ben Selvaratnam into this conversation. Ben, we've spoken on many occasions before, and I'm going to say about you what I shouldn't have to say about somebody who owns or runs or works in a retail shop or outlet. I'm going to say you're on the front line, because every time I speak to you, it literally is as if you're reporting from the battlefield. When you talk about the violent incidents and the smashing and the grabbing and the, you know, the way in which your staff are terrified on a daily basis, it really sounds like a sort of combat region. So talk to me about this change in the law and whether you think or hope it'll make any difference.
Well, I mean, it's great that the government recognised this and the standalone offence for attacking a shop worker, possible jail sentence. I mean, that's great. But I would say, do we not have enough legislation already? And why are they not being enforced? Okay, now we've got this new law. and they hope to provide extra funding, 55 million. I don't think that's a drop in the ocean. It's really not going to be able to enforce all of this. I mean, it takes 2 years to get a case to court. So I don't see how it may look good on paper, but how it actually pans out, I don't have much faith. It's an election year. Was it just a soundbite that's there with no material backup behind it? I'm not entirely sure.
Tell me about recent developments in your shop, because I think every time you talk to us on the programme, the lines go crazy with people responding just to you describing an ordinary week in your shop. So give us the latest lowdown on what's been happening there.
Yeah, I mean, today I was there earlier this morning. We had ITV in as well, asking us our thoughts. And rightly shortly thereafter, we had children come in and teenagers and just walk in to slush machines, help themselves to it and run out again. But two of our guys went to try and chase them just to find out, like, what's going on, just to show that we're on top of things. In that middle of that situation, I wasn't able to call the police. We weren't able to get a response, and it's what we're finding is that it's very much, during a live situation, we can't afford to lose half an hour to try and arrange a police response. They need to be more visible. Police need to be more visible on the beat, up and down the high streets. I think expecting a van with facial recognition technology is great, and I think it will have an impact. But those will be targeted at train stations or high visible shopping centres, and not necessarily the small independents that make up the high street.
Yeah, let me bring Chris back into this conversation. Chris, why do you think that shoplifting has reached this, I would say, beyond crisis point? It's always been a scourge. It's always been something that retail has had to take in and factor in terms of pricing and factor in terms of losses. It's always been an issue, but my God, it's galloped away with us, hasn't it? Is it the cost of living crisis? Is it something else?
So certainly from what we've understood, the cost of living crisis has contributed, unfortunately, to the rise in shoplifting. But also, unfortunately, I think that there's a degree of evidence to suggest that there's a lot of organised crime behind this as well. And the truth is that I just don't think that this has been prioritised. I think it's been seen in the past, unfortunately, as a victimless crime. And it is absolutely not a victimless crime. There is a large amount of assault and violence, physical violence, directed towards store staff as a consequence of shoplifting, particularly if they try to intervene. And for independent retailers, as we've just heard, there's also there's a financial loss to them as well. So this is not a victimless crime, but I think in the past it has been treated like that, and therefore it is people have got away with it, and it's been seen as an easy target for crime and gang crime in particular.
And if you were, Chris, left to come up with solutions, things you thought really might make a difference, things you thought were enforceable, things you thought were deterrents, things you thought might bring this issue to the kind of prominence it deserves, what would you do?
I think we've got to see the police take action. I think we need to see people prosecuted. We need to see to take this crime seriously. We can't have a situation where there is almost lawlessness in our shops and the high streets up and down the country. The retail industry plays such a significant role in the way that British society views itself and operates, that the idea that it's become, as you say, at the front line in some ways is almost ludicrous. So actually seeing these crimes, arrests being made, prosecutions being made, and it being taken seriously. As I say, I think the law is in place now for this to happen. We need to see the police resourced properly, these crimes being taken seriously, and people being taken all the way through to being prosecuted.
Ben, every time we speak on the programme, you talk about wondering about your future and wondering about whether it's worth it and whether it's worth carrying on the business. I think you've even talked to me in the past about sometimes thinking of selling the business, but realising it comes with such a kind of precarious health warning because of the shoplifting scourge that you don't think you stand much chance of that. What are your current thoughts on continuing trading and the profitability of a business which is basically under daily attack?
Yeah, I mean, the fixed costs are very high, just employing extra staff members, having security over the weekends. We can't afford it all the way throughout the week. It's, you look at the figures, it doesn't make sense. And I really worry about the next generation of entrepreneurs, young businessmen and women coming up who want to take up some of these empty units on the high street. Why would they? If business is so tough as it is, it's so competitive, and if you have to physically man the doors, if you have to provide security and protection because you don't know whether you'll get the police response, why would you go into that kind of situation? So I really worry about the next new generation of entrepreneurs coming through and how they're going to face all these issues.
And talk to me a little bit about social issues. We used to have a picture of a shoplifter, well, two pictures really. So one was the chancer, the opportunist, the thief, was just coming in with his or her eye on the main chance to just, tea leaf as much stuff as they possibly could and run. And the other was the person who really is down on their uppers, down on their luck, is looking for just something for dinner or some milk for the baby or a loaf of bread, the person that you could feel tremendous compassion for and think, my gosh, when you've sunk that low, then if you just really ask the shopkeeper, he might well just give you a loaf of bread because you've hit such hard times. What do you think are the social conditions that have resulted in the shoplifting that you're seeing and experiencing every day?
Yeah, I mean, what you described is some reflection of the cost of living crisis. We see mums in prams and pensioners who've been regular customers previously, now slipping something into their pocket, and you then know they're using shoplifting as a means to an end, which is almost understandable. But we're also getting a massive rise in criminal gangs who are stealing to order, very professional, very organized. They come with distraction techniques, and they'll come and they'll clear the shelves. And they're hard to spot, and they're very good at what they do. And you've got the vulnerable people, the people with addiction issues, and they are prolific. A lot of it is made up with repeat offenders, to be fair. And you do wonder why there isn't a database of these repeat offenders, because more likely than not, 40 to 50%, I would say, are known faces. And so if they keep being let off and keep being put back on the streets, then surely having a program to target them, not only with jail, but other support that they could be useful to them, would go a long way to kind of reducing this massive shoplifting figure that we're seeing.
And do you feel as if drugs and the ubiquity of drug addiction is playing a big part in this too?
Yes, no, I mean, clearly, these repeat offenders have drug issues. They could be doing it by themselves. They could be being used by these criminal gangs. But they are very fearless in what they do. They need to steal to fund their habit. They are the toughest people to deal with when confronting. You don't know how it's going to be. More likely than not, they will not return the goods, and it can get violent. Last year, when we tried to retrieve some stolen wine bottles, both my staff and myself got bottled by those bottles. It's very the staff subsequently handed their notice and left, and I wasn't surprised because this is the kind of level of violence that you have to become accustomed to, which I just don't think is the right thing to be. We're retailers, we're there to serve the community, not to provide security and man the doors.